Good afternoon, everybody. Nice to see you here. I hope you're all as excited as I am for the Mastery series. Very excited to launch this program. It's a professional program. We launched our Level 8 mentoring program just 6 weeks ago. Baruch Hashem, great response. And this is our first educational program linked to that. Last year, we actually ran a program called the Launchpad, and Steve was one of the presenters. And he gave an excellent presentation that really, it just blew everybody away. And I said, we got to have Steve back and do something more substantial. So Steve has been a business coach for many years, coaching all types of businesses, all shapes and sizes, and he has a particular philosophy and strategy that he employs. And these next 4 weeks, Steve is going to share with you some excellent information that could help you along the path of growing your businesses. Each week is a different topic. This week is going to be the strategy class, and then it's going to be the marketing, and then the operations, and then growing your team. So we're going to cover many important essentials that you could either make use of right away or put into your database of important information to use at the right time. Now, before we get started, just for a little networking purposes, and so Steve could get to know you guys, if everyone could in the chat, okay, instead of going around asking everyone to speak, and I'll take us a half hour, if everybody could please in the chat just put your name, your company name, and what you do, and this way Steve will see who you guys are, and plus for networking purposes, maybe you guys will see some other company like, oh, let's do business together. So if everyone could just quickly take 30 seconds, go to the chat function, just put your name, your company name, and maybe a 1-sentence description. And this way, it could be a little networking getting done over here. Okay, we see them coming. Here we go. Very nice. Keep them coming. We've got 4 so far. As you guys do that, I just want to give an important shout out. The Mastery Series and the whole Level 8 mentorship program has been enabled thanks to some businesses that saw the value of what CHY is bringing to the community and got behind us. I want to give a special thanks to Ainsworth and Gorkin Law Firm, and to Be Hired, Barry Volasov, and Recruiter, and to the SBA Loan Group, and shikoyach to them. And everyone, just keep your introductions coming. But Steve, I'm going to pass the floor on to you now, and please take it away. I'm here the whole time. If you have questions, post them to the chat. I'll monitor the questions. I'd like this to be as interactive as possible, so Steve will pause and take questions, and it'll be engaging, and I hope you enjoy this as much as I do. So, Steve, go ahead. Without further ado.
All right, thank you very much. Welcome everybody. So we have a good mixture of different people, and the one thing I want to, before we start, I want to say is, like, everybody has, what you do is all wrong, right? Because right now, the reason that you're here is because, for the most part, I believe you're all business owners, right? And so instead of I'm a CPA and I do taxes, no, you are the owner of a CPA business. You're an owner of an event management business, and that I want to change your mindset of how you think about your business. And you guys been through like lots of different marketing classes and stuff. And I'm going to get you to think about marketing in a different way and get you to think about your business in a different way itself. So before we get started, I'll just share a little bit more about me. I've owned and operated the office of Action Coach down in Jacksonville, Florida since 2004. So I've been doing this for quite a long time. And the Action Coach itself we are a worldwide coaching organization. We have over 1,000 different offices in 70 or 80 different countries around the world. So over the years, I've helped them a variety of different types of business And what we're going to talk about is that type of business doesn't matter. And we're going to talk about what the business chassis is, that the things that you all have in common. But I'll sort of start out with, why did I do this? Why I'm in the thing that really drives me and my business. And this is really a key that I want to make sure everybody gets understands is your business should not be your life. Your business should give you more life, right? And so, why I do this is my family, and my kids are spread out on over. And I got my daughter that one of the best things that ever happened in COVID was my daughter moved from Crown Heights back into Jacksonville along with her husband, who was over on the far right, Moshe Gorin. I don't know, his claim to fame is everybody's familiar with Hayenu. Well, his company actually created the Hayenu app in there. And then my son is next to him. He lives out in California in the Valley, working out there. And then actually my son Chaim, who's right next to me, he's actually worked was in yeshiva with Rabbi Wordy's son as well. And that's sort of how we began our connection together, was when they had lunch. He had lunch with you a while back. And then my son Yosef is in Olei Torah right now. So, and then just my grandkids and my wife for over 40 years. And that's the reason why I do this. And I love to be able to help people to be able to really help them create a business so they could have more life. So what are we going to, so this is part of a 4-week series, and what are we going to cover over the next 4 weeks? And it's really going to start off with, today is really about, we're going to talk about sort of creating this business success roadmap. And I'm going to talk about the overall strategies of how you should grow a business. And then over the next few weeks is we're going to talk about the really steps 2, 3, and 4. We're going to spend those sessions where we're going to talk about your niche marketing, and really the most important thing are, what are the 5 drivers of profitability? How do you leverage your marketing to deliver profits? Because we're in business not to make money, we're in business to have a profit and then turn that profit into cash, right? Then the next week, we're going to go in and say, how do I create an automatic business? How do I create a business that works without me, right? Create an automatic business. And then the last week, we're going to talk about, how do you build a team? Because what you're going to learn out of this series is, you do not grow your business, your team does, right? So to be able to get started, we have to start with the right mindset. And we need to we're all here because we want to be able to create more success, right? So let's take a look at it. What's a simple success formula? And sort of and what really is success? So when you sit down, there's really 3 essential elements to consider. First, there's motivation, then there's knowledge, and then there's implementation. So when we have these 3 ingredients blend together, they sort of pave our pathway to success. So let's start off and talk about motivation, right? Motivation is sort of that spark that ignites or drives you to succeed, right? It answers the question is, why do I do what I do, right? And so for me, it's all focusing around my family and really helping my family, but also my clients and their employees' families and whatnot, right? The next thing, and where do we get some of this motivation? You can go online. There's like TED Talks. Life coaching is really good with this, all which help us connect our purpose and fuel our passion. But really, the thing is we could have all the motivation in the world, but without knowledge, motivation is like a car without fuel. I like to sort of say is, what happens if you motivate an idiot, right? All you have is a motivated idiot. So that's where the knowledge and the how-to is really very critical. And this is where we go to workshops, various different resources like we have here with the Crown Heights Young Entrepreneurs Group here. And that's where they come in handy. They equip you with the necessary skills and the know-how. But remember, having motivation and knowledge, but without taking action, is like having that fancy car, but keeping it in the garage, never driving it. And implementation is, or really, if you think about it, is the what and when brings your motivation and your knowledge to life. And here, this is where, over the years, this is where my company, Action Coach, where we aim to really assist small and medium-sized business owners, is by addressing all 3 of these areas of success with the motivation, knowledge, and implementation, but really recognizing that implementation often poses the biggest challenge for business owners, right? And figuring out where to start and what to focus on. So that's what this whole webinar is really going to be about, is give you that pathway. Because when it comes to success, success isn't an event. It's not an end goal. Success is a process. It's really the accumulation of small yet consistent decisions and actions that will yield those big results over time. And those, we might see people that have really seemed like they're an overnight success. But really behind that overnight success is long hours, working day and night and, in persevering and doing the tasks that sometimes people don't really like doing, that are challenging or maybe seem very insignificant. But it's those little things that add up that really lead to our success over time. We just see the accumulation of all that when we say, oh, that person just became an overnight success. No, it didn't happen. It was a process. And that's what this series is about, is sort of help you understand that process. Because I'm going to give you a hint. Running a business, as the more you run a business, doesn't get easier. You have to get better. And I think that's the key. And that's the most important part that we need to sort of remember in there. So the next part that I want to talk about, and I could actually spend probably a whole hour just talking about this one slide.
But one second, Steve, before you go, since there was a few more people that jumped on after we did the introductions, anyone that joined in the recently in the chat, just put your name and your company name. It's good networking for everybody. Okay, go continue, Steve. Go continue.
Cool. And if there's any questions that sort of pop up along the way, stop me, and if I miss those questions. And stuff. So what I want to talk about right now is the power of the point, right? It's that focal point within us, sort of, if you want to say, it's that little nakuda that shapes our actions and influences, those around us. And we could either utilize this power to inspire or to sort of deplete the energy around us. So we could, a lot of people know people that are energy vampires, I like to call them, right? And they're always going around, they're blaming other people, they're coming up with excuses, or they might be in denial that they're the problem themselves. And a lot of times, I'll sit down and work with business owners and their team, and everybody is sort of looking at and pointing fingers to everybody else, and without really saying, hey, how can I help? How can I solve this problem? And that's where we started going above the point. And this is where we start to take responsibilities for our actions. We go ahead and we're most importantly, we're accountable for the expected results that we want. And most importantly, we need to take ownership. So you could become responsible, you could become accountable, but how do you take ownership, right? And that's where it's all about. So maybe somebody could tell me, what would you say is the difference between accountability and responsibility and ownership? So anybody just sort of unmute yourself, and who do you think knows the difference between accountability and ownership?
Accountability is more of a higher up role. So you're taking accountability for someone else who's responsible. Responsibility is more with the details. Responsible for every single task, and then there's someone that's accountable for them. So accountable is higher and bigger than responsibility.
Right. So how do both of those differ from ownership?
Well, the responsibility is more tied to ownership than accountability, I would imagine, because someone who's responsible is taking ownership of the item. I'm not sure how it ties up together.
Right. It's a really fine line. And a lot of times when I ask people to define it, they use accountability and responsibility in the definition. It doesn't work that way, right? So first we become responsible. This is, when we think of employees, the responsible employees that show up for their jobs, right? They show up every day. And then people that are accountable, they might show up, but do they really produce what you want? Well, those are the people. Now that's when we take accountability that, hey, there's an expected result that I need to get. I've set a goal even for yourselves, is you set a goal for yourself. You show up every day to work and you go through and you're going through the motions, and you're like spinning around. You're responsible. You're showing up to work every day, but you're not getting the results you want. So the next step is being accountable for those results. And then now the next part is when we take ownership, and is when you own a business, you automatically have taken ownership. But how do you get somebody on your team to look at your business and not only just become responsible and accountable, but how do you get them to take ownership that in their position, to where when they see opportunities there, they go out and do it. It's like, instead of saying, oh, that's not my job, right? When we sit down, what's the number one goal of every business? Why does a business exist? Anybody? Simple question.
Money.
Say that again.
Money.
Money. Well, money is the end result of us doing it. Our really purpose of what we need to do and we need to focus on is create happy customers, no matter what business you are in. Because if you create happy customers, they will pay you. And they will pay you actually even more than your competition if they're really happy with what you provide them, right? So that's where we need to sort of sit down and sort of take a look at that. All right, so the next question is really a simple one. Is, okay, if we want to become successful, where do we begin? And there is a simple success formula, and I want to share it with you. But before I do, I want you to sort of say, just put this in the chat. It's an easy yes or no question. Is, do you believe that you could achieve anything you desire? Put it in the chat. I got one yes. Come on. No. Okay. All right. So some people are no, some people absolutely 100% yes. And the thing is now I guess the next question is here is do you even believe that there's a formula that can turn those dreams into reality so you can achieve? It sounds really good, right? I'm giving you this big success story. And the answer it's yes. And the thing is, the formula is simple, but it's not easy. But if you understand the process, it helps you, it begins to help you begin that journey. And so it starts off with here. It's a simple formula. Dreams times goals times learnings times plan times action equals success, right? So let's break this down. We begin with dreams. Dreams are the ultimate aspirations or our vision of the future. They serve sort of as the guiding star for all our endeavors in your personal and professional life, right? And so the thing is do you get excited by your dreams? See, if they don't excite you or don't even intimidate you, you got to dream bigger. And why don't people dream? When little kids dream all the time, but as soon as we get to become adults, we stop dreaming. Why? Because when we have these big dreams, there's always that one person, sometimes it's a friend, sometimes it's a family member that says, what are you talking about? You can't do it, right? Or that's impossible, right? They start throwing this negative stuff at you. And these are the people that know us the most. So the question is why don't they believe we could achieve this? And the answer is simple. They see us as who we are now. They're right. Is who we are now, we can't possibly reach that dream. But what they don't see is who you need to become or who you want to become to be able to really fulfill those dreams and be able to become that person that can actually reach those dreams, right? And that's where we fall short because we don't think we can become that person either, right? So that's where the next step is we turn those dreams into goals. And so what's the difference? The difference between a dream and a goal is simple. Goals have a deadline. They have an end date. And usually our goals, the big goals are sort of maybe our lifetime goals, or when I'm working with businesses, I try to work them out 3 to 5 years and whatnot. These goals sort of direct us, highlight our learning path. You might not be ready to attain these goals yet, but then the next step through learning, you will be. So you have to ask yourself next is, what do I need to learn? What skills do you need to master to be able to improve, to be able to achieve more, to be able to get the results that you want. And my goal over these next 4 weeks is to get you to think about what are the things. I'm going to give you the sort of the top line of it, but what is it where you need to say, hey, I need to know more about how I do this, how I implement that, right? Now you can create a learning plan towards that goal of what you want to achieve. But then after the learning, then we draft the plan of integrating this newfound knowledge that we have. And so based on this plan, if we really sort of base this plan on our past actions, it's just going to lead to doing the same thing over and over again, getting the same results, right? But now we have this new learning. Now we have to be the ability to break through barriers and get to that next level. And the next level takes action, right? And this is the consistent implementation of your plan that leads to success. And this is the hardest part. People are good about maybe having some dreams and having goals, but then when the rubber hits the road, it's that implementation part that is the hardest. And sometimes it's not that they don't want to do it. Sometimes they don't know how or how to improve those things. And when I'm working with my clients, my role as the coach is to help them keep them really focused and accountable, and to be able to reach and really take ownership of those goals, and to really be able to execute their plan. So I'm always constantly asking my question, my clients, every coaching session, are we on track or off track? And so that's what you need to ask yourself every day. Am I on track or off track? And if you're off track, how do I pivot or adjust to get myself back on? So success really lies in that implementation and taking action. I guess that's why my company is called Action Coach and not Think About It Coach, right? Because when we just think about it, nothing happens, right? So why don't we do this? Why don't everybody, I'm going to skip that question right now. Let's just go, whoops. My mouse is going crazy on me. Let's get into the actual 6-step process. And again, I'm going to sort of go through each of these at a very high level. And then we're mostly going to be spending the next 3 weeks talking about the niche or marketing stage, leverage, and team, right? So when what we've done up to this point, I've sort of given you a quick little overview. We talked about the success triad of motivation, knowledge, implementation, recognizing it's really our daily actions and decisions that forge our path to success. And, what are the areas that maybe will impede our progress? Question? Nope, we're good. Okay. Then we talked about the success formula: dreams, goals, learning, planning, action, right? And we're going to talk about how all these things fit together. But now what we're really talking about is how do we turn your business into what we call at Action Coach, our definition of a successful business is a commercial, profitable enterprise that flourishes, that works without you, the business owner, right? So commercial means it's something you're making, you're doing something for money, right? Profitable is actually you're making profit. You're making a profit. But now, why don't I call it a commercial, profitable business that works? Why do I call it an entity? Anybody have an idea on that? Why an entity and not a business? Nobody? Right, I'll share it with you then. And when the biggest problem that I have when I'm working with business owners and trying to get them to exit out of their business and help them create that exit strategy is they are so tied to their business. They and their business are one. So when you think about it as an entity, the entity now is something bigger than the business owner themselves, right? And that's what we need to think about is this business, what you're trying to create, the product that you are or service that you are building right now is not the individual thing you do, but it's the business itself. How can you create this business, this entity that somebody might want to pay you money for that you could sell to down the road, whether it's 5, 10, 20, 30 years down the road, because that's where you're going to get your biggest return on your investment of everything you're doing, right? And that's what those are the things that we need to sort of focus on. And these are the 6 steps that's going to help you to get there. All right. So let's start with the bottom let's start with mastery, right?
A second, Steve,
And
I want to re-emphasize to everybody what you just said, which it's very powerful, and it's not something that most people think of for a very long time. Most people, they get into a business, start a business because they're very passionate about something, and they just want to make money. And they're right, like you said, they view the business as themselves. They never try to create something that they're outside of it. And they years later, as the business is growing, all of a sudden they start thinking about it. And you're advocating that people should start right away. Is that what you said?
exactly, that should be your goal. Because the thing is if you try to sell your business and you're involved in the business itself, and as soon as you sell it, most of the value leaves with you. But if the business is not dependent upon you, now when you sell it, there's more value. So before you sell it, you need to create a whole team that is running that business when you don't have to show up.
So
Right?
somebody posed the question just now, which is what I want to push you on. Is that is that from your perspective, every single business, even if it's someone starting a service business, whatever it is, that's how they have to start their business? Is that they have to right away think about how can I build this so that I can sell it? Like, well,
It depends. Those that have sort of the entrepreneurial mindset, yes. If you just think of your business as a job and you just want to, and you hate working for other people, and so you're going to sort of say, and I want the flexibility, so I'm just going to create a really good job for myself where I can make a lot of money and I could have the freedom to do what I want. Okay, that's fine. But that's not a business. That's creating a job for yourself. And some people make really good money with that job. And so it really depends on what you want. And sometimes it's not necessarily selling the business, but it's turning that business over to a family member and sort of creating a legacy. That could be the other step around it too. It's how do you exit out of the business? Do you exit and then the business just dissipates? Or are you creating something that can last forever? Does that make sense, everybody? All right. So when we talk about, so we starts off in the bottom and it's mastery. And so there's destination mastery, time or self mastery, delivery, and money mastery. We're going to first start off with destination mastery. And this is all around setting directions for your organization. It really answers the crucial questions of where are we going and how are we going to get there? It sort of ties back to the earlier discussion of the dreams, goal, learn, plan, success formula, right? And we need to have an open dialogue within our team of defining and aligning our business goals of where are we going. And it's usually, in our coaching process, this is like sort of the first step that I do is help them to create this vision. And most business owners have it in their head, but then they don't communicate it to those around them that are trying to help them build their business, whether it's vendors and or teammates or team members or even family members, right? So we need to be able to have that clear vision and a path of how we're going to get there. The next step is time or self-mastery. So I hate the word time mastery. You can't master time. I look at time as a flow of energy. It's the self-mastery is how do we master ourselves to be able to utilize the time that is before us, right? Because once the time is gone, it's gone forever, right? If you lose your money, you can always make it back. But once you wasted your time, that time is gone forever. It never comes back, right? So this whole thing talks about is our productivity and the processes that will help us stay focused on those small, little, minute tasks that's going to lead to the significant results. It's all about creating a team that is competent and productive, right? And it starts with us. If you're just a small business and you're a team of one, you have to look at what is your competency and how do you increase your productivity? Where do you spend your time that's going to bring the most value to the business, right? Do you have a system in place that fosters this, that teaches you this, right? And those are some of the things that I help my clients and teach them through. I have like a management masterclass that helps them put a management system in their business and things on those lines. But the next step comes into delivery mastery. And this is really where ensures your customers consistently get what they need and when they need it. And this is probably the part where most of you guys excel in, right? Because that's why you're good at what you do, and that's why you're in business. But we have to remember to maintain that high delivery standard. That could be a challenge if conflict sort of spills over into the business, or as you grow, if you start growing too fast, basic systems and things that you have in place might not be able to help you get to that next level. So we need to look at how can we improve our systems to allow us to grow, right? So those are things that we need to keep in mind. And then finally is money mastery. It's all about understanding and managing the financial metrics in your business. Whether it's cash flow, break even, what's your break even points, or even about pricing. I worked with a client. He had this great business. It was really systematized. It was working by himself. This guy came in and said, "Hey, I want to buy your business. I know I could sell much more than what you're doing right now." So I says, "Fine," boom. They sold the business, and and this is a 60-year-old family business, right? The guy bankrupted in a year. He did sell, he like tripled sales, but he sold them into bankruptcy because he didn't understand cash flow and pricing and didn't price his product and service correctly. So it's really important that we understand these things. And I guess the key to remember there's a couple of accountants or financial people in here is, and they'll agree with it, is accounting is the language of business. So, and it should be a common language that you understand. You don't have to understand all the nuances of business or of accounting, but you need to understand what it means and how those numbers affect your business. So when it really comes, because it could really make or break your business. So when it comes to mastery, this is really the most challenging stage. This is like taking your business from chaos and gaining control. And most of the times it's navigating through trial and error and seeing what's working and testing and measuring. But it's really essentially laying the foundation of your business. Because if you go into the niche and the marketing stage before everything you have mastery, you're going to create more chaos because you're not going to be able to handle all the business that's coming in, or you're not going to be able to handle it well. So then you have upset customers, and then you lose them, and it's hard to get them back, right? It's a vicious cycle. So those are the 4 key things that you need to focus on in the mastery stage. Well, the next in part in growing the business is the marketing or the niche stage, right? And we're going to spend a whole workshop talking about this, but I'm going to give you the highlights about it today. So carving out our unique niche, what makes us different is more than a strategy. It's a lifeline for a business. So we're going to be focusing on leveraging unique aspects of your business to set you apart from your competition, right? It's not just about competing on price, but how do you deliver unmatched value? You will never lose any business based on price. Do you agree with me? Yes or no? Anybody? Put it in the chat. What you have to realize, the reason they didn't buy you it wasn't that you were too much, is they didn't see enough value in what you were selling. So we need to understand what is valuable to the customer and how do we deliver that, right? You can sit there and we'll talk about it in more things, but people will stay up overnight, camp out for the latest, greatest Apple new computer that is coming out and pay full price. And then I will wait for Dell computers to go on sale and buy a similar thing. Right? Right. Well, pricing and value. So sometimes if you price it higher, they assume you're going to get value. But now it comes into selling. If your marketing and selling doesn't portray that value, then there's a disconnect, and they say, "Oh, that's too much," or "I don't have it," or you're talking to the wrong clients too, the wrong prospects. Does that make sense?
Yes. Now, Steve, I just want to remind you, in terms of pace, right? Today, 250. Right. So if you're keeping pace of your.
Oh, all right. So we'll move it along a little bit faster, but we were going to get started a little sooner. But all right. So let's talk about this a little bit. So talking about niche is all about no price competition. It's all about understanding that sales and advertising, or your accountant's going to look at advertising and marketing as expense, right? Because it's costing you money and they don't see any return in it. But entrepreneurs, we're going to look at sales and marketing as an investment. For every dollar that goes out, more dollars should be coming in. So the question is, why is it true for some business and not others? And that's because they're going to be measuring their results and then testing it, right? Test and measure. That's the key when it comes down to anything within business. So we do something, we measure the results, we see where it is, we change the activity, we measure the results, and it's a cycle thing around it. And that's where in really the concept is, and people hate me when I say this, but marketing is math. And there's really two sides to marketing. First side is the acquisition cost. Is how much does it cost you to buy a lead or buy a customer, right? If we spend $3,000 in advertising and we get 5 customers, we paid $600 for that customer. Is it good? Well, if the products that you're selling is $10, $15, maybe not. If you're spending selling something that is, $3,000 or $5,000, yeah. How often would you go in there if I gave you $600, would you pay me $600 for a client that's going to pay you $5,000? You'd be doing that all day long, right? And then the second step is, what's the lifetime value? So if you have a client that spends $6,000 with you over 5 years, now that customer that cost you $600 is now worth $300 or $3,000 or $30,000, whatever it is, right? So we need to understand, again, we're going to spend more time with this next week. So the goal here is to increase acquisition costs and then our lifetime value. So we're going to talk about next week, and we're going to go through this really fast, is when we talk about marketing leverage. So we have 2 different cards here. There's there's the VW Golf and an Audi R8, right? And probably should update these pictures, but they make the point. But the whole idea here is, if I was going to give you a car and I gave you to choose, majority of people would probably take the Audi, right? But the thing is, they're just like your business. Both of these cars are made on the exact same chassis. But what makes one more valuable or more expensive than the other, or more wanted, is the bells and the whistles that it puts on it. So every business is made up with the same chassis. Is what makes one business an event management company, another one of CPAs, are the bells and whistles that we put on it. But when we break things down, the things that we really want to do is every business wants more customers, more revenue, more profits, right? So when we sit down, these are just all the results. But what are the things, how do we drive? What are the actions that we take that will get us more customers, more revenues, and more profits, right? And that's what we're going to be talking about here. And these are the 5 ways. And I'm going to spend more time in talking about these numbers next week, but let's just put some numbers to it so you can see how this formula works right now. So if we want more customers, when we break everything down to the lowest common denominator, we need to generate more leads and convert more of those leads, right? Every advertising strategy and marketing strategy that we have is designed to give us more leads. All of our sales strategies is designed about, how can I close more people, or how can I get them to come back from us more often, right? So let's say in our small little business here, we have 400 leads, we close 25% of them, it gives us 100 customers. Well, then we talk about it, and it's like, how often do they come back? Well, each customer comes back from us 2 times. The average sale, every time they purchase from us, they spend $1,000. Some people might spend 100, some people might spend 3,000, but the average is 100. That's the important part. So our revenue is 200,000, our profit margin's at 25%, and then we have $50,000 in profits. But the key to think about it is, don't focus on what's in red. We need to focus on those drivers, because those are the things that generate the results. So, these are the 5 most important numbers that you have in your business. Do you know what they are? If you don't, then you're just winging it when it comes to trying to how to increase profitability in your business. So let's see what the difference is. So what would happen if I would increase each of those numbers by 10%? Most of the time, people will come to me and say, hey, Steve, let's go ahead. And my business, before I got into coaching, was in sales and advertising and marketing. I help people generate leads. If I just go ahead and help you spend all your money and we double your leads or increase it by 50%. Now we're dealing with 6,000 leads. It's, now it's really, you're just working your butt off trying to get, close more people and stuff like that. But if we look at each of these areas and close them by just 10%, we're going to see what happens is your bottom line profits now go from $50,000 to $80,000. Right? If we just doubled it, I think it would just go from $50,000 to $75,000, and we'd have to deal with 6,000 leads instead of 4,400 leads. Right? So that is and we're going to go into strategies and things that we need to do in each of these areas in the next class. But I wanted to give you a top of mind. But what would happen if you did 30% increase in each one of these? It's pretty cool, huh? And so the thing is do you know what these 5 numbers are in your business? If you don't, then then you have a challenge that you have to sort of deal with. You have to know these numbers, because if you don't know them, you can't improve them. Yes.
You have some businesses, I'm talking about the small, especially the smaller ones. Some people they start a business and they're just expecting referrals. They don't necessarily have a plan to get leads and to sell their company, to sell their service.
Do they have a hobby or a business? A hobby, you just wing it and you just hope to get customers. A business, you have a plan and they say, okay, I need to generate so many leads a week, and now I'm going to be accountable and responsible and take ownership to make sure I get it. Hobby is, okay, I'm having fun doing it. Does that make sense?
So bottom line is, you're saying that if somebody is not dedicating a portion of their week towards sales, then they're ignoring a critical part of their business. Is that?
Oh, definitely. It's the lifeblood of a business. Right. And the thing is that for a small business, I know a business owner I dealt with, he was just starting. Well, he'd been in business for a while, but primarily worked by himself. And he'd have 3 different desks in his home office. One desk is where he did all his sales and marketing. The other desk he did is where he dealt with his clients. And the other desk was where he did his billing and all his finance stuff. And because he knew when he sat, he had an appointment with him when he sat at each desk, and he knew what his purpose was when he sat at each desk. And that's how in his mind, that's how he was able to differentiate it. Does that make sense? It was in a way, it was a little extreme, but it worked for him. Right? So, all right. So that's marketing. So we're going to spend the whole time just talking about those 5-way strategies next week. Next comes about leverage. Leverage is about doing more with less in your business. It's about creating systems in your business. The systems stand for saving yourself time, energy, money, and yes, sanity. Right. And that is really the important thing. Otherwise, when you think about creating systems, think about the things that you do over and over and over again. Right. You system, and it's usually like 80, that's like 80% of the stuff. Right, that you do them over, and then there's 20% that is just things that come up. Right, so 80% we systematize. That 20%, that's where we humanize. But we still need to have a system of how do we deal with those things that are outside the system. Right. So then on our third session that we're going to do, we're going to spend the whole time talking about the 9 steps on how do we systematize a business. We'll go into this more detail, but it's the first 3 steps is a vision statement, mission statement, and culture statement. And why is that important? Because this is what the systems are designed to deliver, right? It's to help, and the culture statement helps us do it, is how we're going to do it. And the mission statement is this is what we're trying to achieve, right? But then the next thing, we need to set SMART goals. What do we want to achieve? The systems have to be working towards a common goal. The next thing we do is we need to create an organizational chart within the business. So we need to know what are the functions of the business and how do we systematize each function? Who owns each function, right? Then we create personal contracts or agreements with individuals to let them know what does success look like in their position? What are the things they're supposed to do? Then we have to measure that success, create those KPIs, and then finally, we create the how-to systems that help deliver the results that we want. And then finally,
So-
you need to actually have a management system that helps manage this whole thing. Is there
So
a
someone's
question?
yeah, if someone's a one-person business right now, you're saying they have to do this now?
To a degree. So if you remember, you need to do it on a mastery level, right? But and then so that's why this is going to be, you still need to have a vision, mission, culture of how you want to act within it. If you bring people in, you need to still create smart goals, but you need to create basic systems for yourself. So when something happens, you don't have to think about it. It's just like, boom, do it. Or eventually, maybe you just outsource this and have a virtual assistant, and that system, you just give it to them, right? And so they do it exactly the same way you do it, right? So we'll spend more time and talk about that when we get into the different types of systems and when to do it and whatnot on the fourth day, right? And then once we have the systems in place, now let's start building your team. Doesn't mean that you don't have a team for this, but this is where we start building and trying to get the best people to work for us. Start building our dream team, right? Because the question is, if you want to hire people, and if you want to hire the best in your industry to help you really grow and expand and scale up this business, what you need to build a business that will attract the best people to want to work for you. Why would they want to work for you? And that's why we need to work through mastery and marketing and leveraging team, because we've created this entity that would attract people in there. And what's going to attract them is being aligned to your vision and your common goal that you're going to create for your organization, right? And that's really where it comes down to being able to scale up the team. Because when it comes down to business, most of the time is the business owner will come in and they're focusing on the business, right? That's all it is you're a one-person band, and you're dealing with the business, and then you're dealing with customers, and then you get busy, you run out of time. So then things start falling through the cracks. You don't have enough time to get things done. So then you start hiring people to do what you can't get to, right? But then things are problems because you don't have time to train them, because you're dealing with all the business stuff, and then you're dealing with customers and customers' complaints and all this. And so it's just you're just spinning your wheels. The job, if you want to create a successful business, the job of the business owner is to create a team, and how do you support your team, right? By right pay, giving them a plans and goals and systems to be able to do their job. And what is their job? Their job of the team is to support the customers. Your job as the business owner is not to support the customers. You're the visionary of the business and looking at how do we grow the business. And then the next step is the customers serve the business, and then the business serves you. And again, this works for small 2-3 people. I've had clients that are just one person, but their team might not necessarily work for them, but they might outsource and use different business partners that help them, but they need to be aligned with how do those people help serve their customers, right? And so we'll sort of get into that a little bit. But it really starts off with 6 keys onto a winning team. And we'll spend more time when we go through it. It starts with strong leadership. It starts with you, the leader, right? And the next one is we need to create a common goal, a goal that's not about the money. It's something that everybody on your team can strive for, that will really enroll and inspire them. Then, come back. Then we create the rules of the game. This is how we get things done. This is our culture. Once we have those in place, now we get our team to help us create the action plan. They now take ownership because they've had input into how do we reach the goals that we've set for us. And then you need to, and this is the hardest thing for small businesses, is support risk taking, is let go and give people room to make a mistake. And each mistake is a teaching time, right? And every time I sort of talk to my client is every time that one of his employees screws up and it goes, oh, that goes to my training budget, right? And it's only a training budget is if you stop and teach your employee what went wrong and talk with them and say, okay, what could they have done differently moving forward? And then the other thing too is that you have to have everybody involved in inclusion, because if there's one person that's not buying into your system and your goals, and they have that bad attitude, they're going to be the most disruptive thing. They're like throwing an anchor out of the back of your boat, and you can't figure out why you're not going anywhere, right? And then the next part on team is how do you make sure you have the right people on the bus? How do you align the right people in there? We'll talk a little bit about that itself, right? So those are the four major things. And up to team, what you're doing as a business owner is you're starting to buy back time. The next step, and we're not going to spend a lot of time in here on talking about this, but is synergy is where you look to how do you replace yourself in the business. This is where you look at um, trying to figure out, you have all the systems running. This is where you look at, you could start duplicating your business. This is where you could sit there in some businesses. This is the stage where they can now either open multiple locations, or how do I franchise from this because this model is working so well. And then the last stage is the results, or I also like to call it the freedom stage, is now that you're earning passive income from the business. You don't have to show up for the business to be making money, right? You're making money also through the profits of the business. Your money is now making money for you, right? And so those are the 6 steps, and really the 3 main steps that we're going to be covering over the next 3 weeks is that marketing, niche, leverage, and team. So the question is, where in your business, where do you find yourself in these 6 steps, right? And that's what you really need to sit down and focus on. And I'm just going to leave it to there right now. As I said, the next couple of weeks is about marketing leverage, and then creating that automatic business, that system business, and then how do we create that a winning team. So any questions?
Okay, so 1 second. Before, what we're going to do is Steve is staying on, and we're going to take questions in a minute. Before we do that, this week and this week only, we have a guest presentation. We have with us Levi Ainsworth, who's from the law firm Ainsworth and Gorkin, and he's going to just talk for 10 minutes about legal issues that come up that he's seen with small businesses that you should be aware of. And then afterwards, Steve will be on. He'll stay for Q&A, and then we'll see you again next week. So without further ado, joining us from sunny South Florida, Levi Ainsworth.
Thank you very much for having me. I was requested to kind of give a couple of pointers and keep it fairly short and to the point. So I want to kind of just really hone in on one particular issue that I find specifically with pretty early on businesses. There is a tendency to really try to run before walking. And what I mean by that is there's this very much group mentality. Let's bring everyone in. There's a lot of trust, and everything will just kind of work itself out because it's for the greater good. And unfortunately, what ends up happening is everyone looks at the positive outcomes. And not to sound like a downer, I think it's imperatively important to really consider what if things don't work out exactly as thought, whether that's with a partner, an employee, or a vendor. And or anyone, or a marketing company that you use all of a sudden tells you that we'll triple your sales in the next 3 months. They always say that. What happens if they don't? They'll never answer that directly because it's going to be an agreement that there's no guarantees, but they're kind of hyping you up. So the one thing I would always say is take the time to really walk before you run in the beginning, because once you start the business and once everything starts really moving, it's almost impossible to slow down enough to really create, unless you really create that time and space to do it, which is in the beginning incredibly difficult. And I'd always really push clients in general to consider what happens if things don't go as planned. And I'll give an example to this issue. I had a client of mine that was essentially a small a fund, if you will, investing in a variety of different investments. Needed some assistance with someone to kind of help manage it, go through the numbers, deal with some of the investors on a monthly basis and give them updates. He came to me, he's like, hey, can you please provide me an agreement with him? We're going to be giving equity. So I asked him some basic questions, like, have you worked with him? Do you know what he can do? You know what he's capable of? And what happens if he doesn't actually meet the goals that you have? He's like, well, the goals are a little vague. I'm like, you give him a temporary time, overpay him in cash, and save your equity. Pay him more than he wants for the first 6 months and see what he does. Don't get married so quickly without understanding what you're marrying. 6 months later, he gave me a call. He's like, I really do appreciate the advice. It didn't work out, and if he would have had equity, I just would have been stuck with giving a piece of equity to someone. And I feel like that example comes across everywhere, whether that's with a partner, employees that you promise profit shares, like you're doing really great in sales, but you're not doing half your other job you're supposed to. How do you balance that out? How does that get effectuated? I think this all comes down to the very simple basic core of you really need to set expectations, not just on if things work out, if they don't, and how you deal with it. And if you do, the road off of the highway is a lot easier. If you don't have that plan, it's chaotic, it's stressful. I can tell you, I don't really handle litigation often, it's mostly my partner. Litigation, which no one really expects, is emotionally draining, mentally really frustrating, financially and time intensive. It is almost never worth it going to litigation. And generally speaking, the only people that really win are lawyers, because that's what they do. They get paid to do. Everyone else, it's a loss. So if you can, the more you think through what if things don't line up exactly as I thought it was supposed to, the better, so that you can at least put it in place, set expectations. There's no hard feelings because you already spoke about it. You already have a clear understanding of what is expected. Again, whether that's your partner, employee, vendor, anywhere that's going to come from. I'd say that's a very key point. And then the other one would be is actually read what you sign. I am blown away every single day how often I get agreements that people tell me they just signed it and didn't read a word, and either gave personal liability, didn't realize what they were signing up for, they were told something, and then just DocuSign. I think in today's day and age with DocuSign, that's almost prevalent across the board, where everyone just like clicks and you're done, and now you go into the business. That's part of the same mentality of like thinking, what if things don't work out? What are the ramifications if I have to breach this contract or break the contract? Do I have a way out? Is there a way to do it? What are the factors, etc.? So I really would push everyone to really take the time before taking any steps forward. What happens if that step doesn't work, and how do you want to deal with the aftermath? It would be the one thing I'd really try to press everyone to keep in mind.
Okay. Thank you very much for sharing that, and I'm seconding what you're saying, that from CHYE standpoint, especially like in partnerships, we've seen this over the years where with two people that they decide that they're going to go into business together and they're friends and they don't really make agreements, and then as time goes on and the business starts moving in different directions and they start disagreeing and it gets messy. And there's a line that somebody once said: start your business like a guy so you could end it like a Jew. In other words, no matter what it is, even though you like each other and you have good intentions, make good agreements beforehand when you're friends, and then you'll stay friends. And so thank you very much for sharing that, and thank you to your firm for being a partner of CHYE, and looking forward to staying in touch. For everybody that's on right now, if anyone has questions for Steve or for Levi, maybe if you have questions for Levi, private message him. Levi's staying on here. You could send him a message in the chat. You could choose just send a message to Levi. If you have any particular legal questions, but in terms of the actual class over here, because Steve rushed through a whole presentation so quickly, maybe just Steve, take 2 seconds now, just sum up everything for today, and then the next 3 weeks are going to be much more focused on particular topics. Today was a very, very broad. So go ahead, Steve.
Right. I think Levi put everything into a perspective, because you can't just jump into a business. You have to understand that you can't wing it. Winging it is not a strategy, especially if you're trying to do partnerships or bringing on team members. And really where the challenges are is if you aren't very clear when you hire an employee, what do you expect from them? Usually says, okay, I want you to hire this, and I want you to do A, B, C, and D. But the part of that agreement that they forget to share is not that you don't want them to do A, B, and C, and D. What you want is the end result. Is when you do A, B, C, and D, this is the end result. And you need to make sure that they need to be clear that this is why you hired them, right? The same thing even when it comes to partners is on the partner agreement, whether you should have a buy and sell. But once you even understand that, is if things break up, but even partners need to understand what their role is. Yeah, you're both owners, but who's going to be in charge of sales and marketing? Who's going to be in charge of the operations? Who's going to be in charge of finance? those roles need to be specified. And that's sort of the mastery part, right? You need to first be able to it's a step. You have to create that basic framework down on the bottom of what are your goals, the money mastery, destination mastery, what are we going? And then get into the next one is the niche stage. This is where you're creating predictable cash flow in your business. The next one is now leverage, right? And you can't do leverage before you do niche, because when you're leveraging your business, now you have to invest in more capital into these higher level leverage type or systems within your business, right? So you can't, each step leads to one thing to the other to be able to create that commercial profitable enterprise that works without you. And that is, and you can't jump steps. And that's what the main goal of what we were trying to do is lay out the steps. And now the next couple of weeks, we're going to be specifically of where do we need to focus on in the niche and the marketing step, the leverage and the team.
And Steve, just to add to that point, I've had clients come in that were looking for partnership agreements at their inception. And funnily enough, clients that had successful businesses and didn't have anything on paper. And for insurance purposes, they actually needed to get something on paper. You'll be shocked to find it is almost impossible at that point. And I told them going into it, there's two ways to draft a partnership agreement, either with a ton of detail or not at all. And I advise them, you have a successful business, you're going to get into a fight if you start now having to figure out the details. It is not worth it. Keep everything very blind. You don't want to create a fight of something working well. You really only have one real shot to hold everyone accountable and really lay out what you expect. And that's in the start. And once you get going, it's essentially impossible to kind of reverse that back. And that's from a legal standpoint, I feel like in general, as you were saying, all businesses once you start scaling, it's really way more complicated and difficult to unscale and then rescale again, so I'd say the beginning stages are imperative to really look ahead. And obviously having good accountants, lawyers, business coaches, whatever it is, I know a lot of people, and especially also when I started, it's very nerve-wracking and scary. Is it worth it? Is it worth spending that money? Almost all the time, you look back 5 years down the line, it's like, I wish I would have spent more and gotten these couple of things ironed out a little clearer. I wouldn't have to deal with the headache now. And it becomes almost like an indifference. So really important to get things going and start. Exactly. It's just only become bigger as time goes on.
So I would just say for everybody that joined today, to sum up today's class, really what Steve's message is, a lot of people that jump into the business, they're looking to make money and they have a skill, but they don't think big picture. And so you got to stop for a second, even though everyone wants to just make the next sale, you got to stop for a second and zoom out. That was the purpose of today's class, to zoom out a little. And then the next 3 weeks, we're gonna zoom back in. Next week is marketing, 2 weeks from now, systems, and 3 weeks from now, teams. So nice to meet all of you. The class is officially over. Steve, if people want to ask questions, if you want to stay,
I have a couple minutes for questions if somebody asks.
Okay. But if everyone else, feel free to jump. That's
I expect more questions coming next week, but we get into more of the details.
This question isn't so related directly to your course, but you were mentioning a lot about businesses being able to run on its own without the owner. How would that compare to massive companies like Barstool Sports, which was sold and then bought back by the original founder for next to nothing?
Okay. Okay. I didn't hear the business, but it's really simple. It's when he bought it back, is he involved in the day-to-day operation of the business? Does he have to ship?
Dave Portnoy.
I'm sorry?
Barstool Sports, Dave Portnoy.
Okay.
I can jump in. I know the transaction fairly well. Firstly,
okay.
The parent company that purchased was having a PR nightmare and they needed to move off of Barstool, so it was affecting their stock. So at that point, they were looking at it from a massively macro. They lost a ton of money on it. But if you looked at it a couple of weeks later, the stock price of which the parent company they got purchased by increased and basically leveled it out. Additionally, there was a clause in the contract that in the event Barstool sells, they would have to unload several $100 million back. So the likelihood is he's never going to sell again because it's not going to be worth it. It was done mostly nothing to do with business. It was just done because they needed to partner, and it's a gambling, and it wasn't working well. They thought it would, and it was a bad decision. I think from that perspective, it's good to take any bad decision you make. The quicker you deal with it, the better. You're going to have losses either way. So I would say they acted pretty rational, even though on paper it looks nuts. It wasn't as crazy as it seemed.
Right. But from the perspective of this course is, when you're, especially when you're looking at larger corporations, president of a company isn't involved in the day-to-day sales of the business, isn't involved in hiring people. They have a team involved that's doing it. They don't have to show up every day per se to do it. And they have the systems in place and a management system in place that they could sit down and look at it and say, and basically look at a meeting with their direct reports that's running each department and sort of say, okay, are we on target or off target and going? But that person needs to be the leader and give them the vision and the goals that the rest of the team works at. They don't have to show up every day for that business to make a sale. Everything, the processes are all in place. Does that make sense? It's a different perspective, but that's what we're trying to get to.
I have a question. Building systems takes time and energy. When a company is launching a new service, does it make sense to sometimes get the service off the ground, learn from the processes that happened, and then implement systems after that, or systems should be implemented upfront?
Well, I mean, every business has a system, right? So it's how sophisticated is that system. So, when we talk about delivery mastery, to be able to get, and there we're talking about basic systems, which is getting your product or service delivered to your customer in the time and in the way they expect, right? So, but if you now are dealing with 3 times as many customers, those basic systems might not work anymore. So now you have to sit there and start tweaking it. And how do I create a system that I can grow into? And that's why systems comes after mastery and marketing in the niche stage. That's when we're investing in those big systems and putting in money into that type of stuff. Does that make sense?
Referring more to basic processes of the company.
Well, and the basic process. Okay, what happens when you sell something, right? There's a step-by-step process, and you want to make sure that you follow that simple process every single time. If you do it different ways every time, it's just going to cost you time and energy and possibly even money, right?
For sure, but I'm saying learning those processes from the companies that offer one service, but moving into a new market, offering an additional service. I'll be honest with you, I'm missing doing that. I could spend a few days or a few months thinking through the system of how I'm going to actually implement that new service, or I could say, you know what, I'm getting this off the ground. I'm telling people I'm doing it, and I'll learn from those first clients of building the exact process that I need.
Well, yeah, I mean, I guess from that perspective, if you're just getting it off the ground, I mean, you still in your mind have, okay, when I sell something, what's my next step, right? You know what that next step is. Well, that's part of the system. It's a simple system, but I first do this, do that. Boom, right? It could be a 3-step system that's really simple. And then as the business grows, it's okay, this isn't working anymore. How do I improve that? Right. And that happens. That happens throughout the growth of the business, right? But when we get to that leverage stage, you already have those things are working, but now what can we do to invest into our business so we can actually do more with less?
Got it.
That's because it's not called system, this is called leverage.
Got it.
Right. But yeah, I mean, you have those basic systems, but it starts off with, okay, I sell something, what's next? Okay, I do this. And then, all right, my client's not happy. All right, what do I need to do to make them happy?
I'm also referring to like the communication of a customer. When a new client comes in, right, you get a new lead. What's the response you're going to be getting? Or then the first follow-up meeting and stuff like that. But so you can spend the time investing in creating those like automated responses and stuff like that. Or you say, I can get this off the ground. Let me figure out from experience what the best response is and then implement it.
Right. Well, automation is a next level system.
Oh, okay, fine.
Right. So, but I'm talking about, okay, when a client calls, how am I supposed to greet that client? What information do I send them when the lead comes in? And it doesn't have to be automated. I need to have that information pack ready to go out. I can't just say, oh, I have a client let me put together information for them. Then it's too late. So those are basic, simple systems. We don't think of them as systems, but it's how we run our business.
Got it. Thank you.
All right, cool. Mendel.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. So I had a question. It's something you mentioned in the beginning of the class. You mentioned that your business isn't your life. Your business should give you more life. So I just wanted to see if you could maybe expound on that a little more, specifically addressing the question of how to, as a business owner, as opposed to someone who works a 9 to 5 for someone else. They can come home and they're completely, not worried about what they do, the next morning or the day before. They're just moving on with life, family, kids, friends, health, whatever it may be. But as a business owner, there's always, you're the one on top of it. So you have to, be more involved, and, it could get, overwhelming, or it could interfere with your personal life. How would you, or, what tips would you give to, especially starting out, how to, sort of say compartmentalize, I think the word is, to try to, separate things, even as a business owner, and try to be fully involved in other things as well without, being too much, into the business.
Okay. So, well, it's two things. So are we talking about you're starting a business and that's full time, or you're working for somebody else and starting a business?
No. So for someone who has their own business,
okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So, I mean, the simple answer is follow the 6 steps. But really, where it comes into is when you're starting a business. Like I said, it's like, people they look like they're the overnight successes. In the beginning, you're going to have to work long hours, right? Until you could start getting, you're going to have to put the time in, but you're putting the time in, so you don't have to later, right? If you think about it, is, athletes, will sit there and practice every day. They don't want to practice. They don't want to do wind sprints, but they know that I got to do this so I could eventually get to the point where I could be in the championship game. Right? The championship game is getting that business running by itself where you don't have to, but you're going to have to put some time and energy to put that off the ground. But now on the other time is, if family is important to you, you have to make sure that you're there. Everybody wants balance in their life. Let me explain it this way, right? It's impossible to achieve balance in life, right? Because balance is 50-50. Right? It's impossible to be 50% with my family and 50% in my business. But the thing is that if you're sitting there and you're spending all your time in your business and trying to get it over, and you have a little bit of time, and maybe it's like 80-20 when you're starting to do it. But the point is that when you're that 20% with the family, be with your family and not your business. Be there. And then, because then they know that they're important to you. And so does that make sense?
Yeah.
And that's how you
Definitely.
prioritize it is make that separate, even though it's overwhelmingly you're spending all your time in the business, but when you are with the family, don't be with the business. Don't think about your business.
Right.
Because that's the biggest mistake most people do. And then, with our family, all we're thinking about is all the problems with the business. Right?
So you kind of have to
Hashem gives us
off.
Shabbos to be able to break our way from the business. Well, make sure that at least on Shabbos we're spending with our family and not thinking about all this other stuff. Right? Make sure that they're a top priority in our lives.
Right. All right. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Okay,
Very good.
very
Thank
good.
everybody.
Thank you. Yes. I hope you all enjoyed, and same time next week, next Wednesday, 2 p.m. Eastern time, class 2. We're going to be focusing on marketing. Thank you, everybody, and looking forward. It's good to see you again, Steve.
All right,
care.
take care. All right,
Thank
see you
you
guys.
very much.
See everybody next week.
Thank you.